And we're live. Welcome to Book Chat Book Club. I don't know why I named it that. It's so hard to say. Book Chat Book Club with me, Julie Beline, and our special guest, Traci Hunter Abramson. Yay! Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a lot on your plate with your whirlwind book tour you have coming up for not only Jim and Catherine, but your 20th anniversary of books, right?
Yes. 20 years ago, my first book came out.
Isn't that crazy? It feels like time has gone by so fast for me. Because I think we started our publishing journey right around the same time. And man, I don't feel like it's been 20 years.
You know, the calendar lies. We just need to expect that it's just lying to us. So we're calling it 20 years because it sounds cool, but we're not that old. Just put that out there.
Well, I know you're doing some special stuff with your books for your 20th anniversary. Tell me about that.
So I actually launch tomorrow, so Tuesday the 12th, out of St. George. The Seagull Bookstore will have the launch event, and they're actually bringing in cinnamon rolls because cinnamon rolls are like big for my Jim and Catherine characters.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, so that'll be a lot of fun. And I know they've got like giveaways at all of the book signings this coming week. And so then we'll run down to Mesa. I shouldn't say, we'll fly down to Mesa and I think we're in Mesa for a day, and then, for Wednesday night, and then Friday, I'm in, I think, American Fork, and then I think for Seagull, and then we'll do Deseret Book in Cottonwood Heights on Saturday morning, and then Logan Seagull Book on Saturday evening. So
a whirlwind tour.
That's for this week. And then we have a couple more, Soul Sisters the following week, I think, in South Jordan, and the spring soiree for the Shadow Mountain crowd. And, it's like, hey, if there's a party, I'm normally going to be like, yeah, you let me in, I'll be there. So
yeah, count you in.
Exactly.
So now, didn't they give you like new covers or something on your original? Was the original 3 books?
Yeah. So the first 3 books, so the Undercurrents trilogy, so it's Undercurrents, Ripple Effect, and The Deep End. They recovered all of those so that they actually look like a series. Because, back when we started, like you said, we started around the same time, they didn't really have a lot of the cohesive, they didn't necessarily like having series, even though they did them very well. But yeah, so people didn't even realize that The Deep End had 2 books that came before it and things like that. But we're like, it'll be a lot of fun. And we actually did probably had about 500 to 600 editorial changes in each book, just to clean some things up and modernize a little bit of it and things like that. So
I was going to ask you if you modernized very much of it at all. I mean, when you say modernize, like, were you adding cell phones or what were you doing?
Yeah, a little bit was like just how common cell phones were, because back then when I wrote it wasn't terribly common for everyone to have one, and so there were a few things like that, and just like a few cultural things. But because that series is the base, it's kind of the springboard of my Saint Squad series, which then springboards into the Guardian series, so everything kind of connects. We didn't want to make it too modern because otherwise it didn't really make sense for everything else that happens after it. So
yeah,
we just did a little bit, but a lot of it was just things like, the writing, cleaning some things up. I mean, you grow a lot as an author. Every time you get edited, you become better. So,
yeah, that's right.
So it's like, there's a lot of things in here that I could do better. And if we can do a little bit, that's great. And they gave me permission to like do whatever you want. I said, fantastic. So I went through it. My daughter is actually one of my assistants, and so she is a great copy editor, and so she went through and did a proof as well. And then, like, okay, I'm going to agree with this one and disagree with that one, and most of the time I agreed. I'm like, oh yeah, I really messed up here. So it's just, but it was, everything kept the story the same. There was no new content. It was just making the story a little better as far as being more readable.
Was it weird to go back to those books though? I haven't read the first book I wrote in a long time.
I know, it was actually kind of like going home, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I love those stories. I've always loved the characters. And I know some authors are like, oh, I don't want to read what I wrote, when I first started and stuff. And I've never been like that. I'm like, I love these stories. But, I think part of it is just owning the fact that we're going to be better in the future books we write. And so, you just don't, you don't judge yourself off of yesterday's version. You just be happy that you were where you were when you were there.
Exactly. It's really just kind of like a snapshot of your writing journey, where you started and how far you've come, for sure. Every book is a snapshot in that journey.
Exactly.
So let me talk about Jim and Catherine for a minute, because that is kind of like a prequel novel, not a novella, a full book. How
Yeah.
did you come up with that idea for doing like the prequel of all of your series?
So it was I kind of fell into it. I think it had probably been in the back of my mind, but when I wrote my Dream's Edge series, I went back in time to the 1980s for several of the books and some of the novellas, and the Whitmores showed up. Like, they just decided to show up. They tend to do that. Like, I don't always invite them; they just insert themselves. And so I was like, you know what? This would be so fun. So one of the novellas from the Dream's Edge series is from Jim Whitmore's older brother. And I was like, you know what? This would be so fun to go in and see, like, I had written one version, and it already showed Jim and Catherine already knowing each other and kind of had a backstory. And my editor was like, we need to change some other things. And when I changed it, you know what? I'm just going to take them out, or like, I'm going to take Catherine out so that I can do whatever I want, that I'm completely open. And I said, but then I want to do a story. So I think that's kind of where the real idea was born. And then it dawned on me that when I was going through and looking at my timeline for what was coming up in my publication schedule, said I'd already written Royal Duty, which comes out in, or no, I take it back. I'd already written Disconnect, which is my next Saint Squad. It comes out in June. And I said, okay, I'm going to give you this now just so that you can get in the system. But I'm telling you right now, it's not the next book. Jim and Catherine has to come out in March of 2024. And they're like, why? I said, because March 2004 was when Undercurrents came out, and that's when we first met them. So I said, this is just so perfect. I said, but I'm not going to give you Disconnect unless you agree that this one gets to come first. Said, okay, like, you win. We're happy with that. And they love the idea. So that made it a little easier. So
well, Jim and Catherine, it's such a fun kind of revisit. It takes place in 1986, which could be considered near historical fiction. Sadly, right. I remember living through those days, so for me, exactly. It's not. But I had to chuckle a little bit at all of the things in 1986, like, the landlines and classified ads and, all those things back then. Did you really have to, what was the most fun, nostalgic thing to put into that book?
I think probably one of the things was just like the going and like getting the 1 hour developing of film, because we had to read. So like today, we have our phone, and it's like, I have a photo. I have the photo now, and just the idea that you didn't have that back then. Like, you have no idea if the photo you took was good or not until it was too late,
Yeah, so, exactly.
That was fun. It was just looking at that, just, visiting the DC area, because the first time I visited DC was, I think, actually in 1986. So it was that summer. So it was like, I never even really thought about it before. I was like, oh yeah, that is exactly when I was there the first time. This, going by the White House and going on the mall and everything. So yeah, it was definitely like, I didn't have to do research. I could just remember it. So
meant to be. Well, there is some political intrigue in that book. Did you have to do any research for like any of that, like campaign donations and that sort of thing?
A little bit on the donations and such, just to see what it was back then. But because I live in the DC area, this is kind of second nature. It's kind of like, if you live in California, you look out and you see a palm tree, it's just there, and that's kind of how it is in DC. You just, campaign stuff is just always there. You've got, lots of people who work in, on the Hill, and political aides and things like that. So that's always been around me for the past 30 years or whatever. So it was really just trying to make sure it was accurate for the time, I think, was the biggest challenge.
Now, Jim is kind of a character who's very, straight arrow, like Boy Scout. Did you even think for a minute of maybe giving him something that made him not quite so perfect?
It was funny because like I tried and it just wouldn't stick. Like every time I tried, it was like his Achilles heel is just that he doesn't know how to lie. Like he's just that. I don't know how. I got nothing. So
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 it's
yeah,
like with him, that's just his character.
yeah, and it's like, we did, I think I threw something in there about like, how in his past he'd, like lied about or tried to lie about breaking somebody's window or something like that. Or, because I mean, that's kids, you're not perfect. You just have all those things and stuff. But yeah, everything I would try to come up with, it's like it always felt forced. I mean, the characters are pretty much so established that
Yeah.
it was just letting them be themselves in that time. And, you know,
It seems so innocent, that time period now to me.
yeah.
I miss some of the old days.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
Hmm.
it's weird because, like, in today's world, we can't even imagine like getting on a plane without having a phone with us, or,
Yeah.
um, you know, just all the different things that we so often have. And back then, it's like we survived somehow, so clearly we could function. But in today's technology, like, you really can't. Like, when you travel, it's really hard to not have certain things with you. And
Yeah.
there are certain things that you honestly cannot do unless you've got some of today's technology. So it's been interesting to see how much the world has changed, where we are so, it's not just a luxury anymore, it's a necessity for things
Hmm.
that we just didn't even need.
Back then.
So,
Well, and wasn't there, I think there was a line in there how when her dad was on the internet, she couldn't be on the phone, or do you remember those days when
oh
the
yeah,
phone line was tied up with the internet?
yeah,
I laughed
yeah.
at
And
her
it's
at
like,
that one.
well, I'm just like having like, you had the phone. If somebody was on the phone, you couldn't use the phone, like somebody was using it. So we didn't all have our own phones. So it's like, yeah, we had many, many times. I mean, I'm from a family that, I mean, it was me and one sister, but then my dad got remarried and then there was 4 girls. And let me tell you, waiting for phone calls, not pleasant. Like, it's like,
No,
I
no,
need to
not at
call.
all.
So
Well, I have to tell you, cinnamon rolls is one of my favorite desserts. Is it one of yours? And is that how it got into the book?
yeah, I think it was just like, we have, one of the things we do at church for us is, on Father's Days, we do cinnamon rolls for all the men. And it's just so funny how everyone's like, yes, don't forget the cinnamon rolls. And I have this one friend, Pam, who's just amazing at making them. And so I told her, I said, when we were doing, the Fiction Kitchen Trio cookbook,
Hmm.
I'm like, I need to have an amazing cinnamon roll recipe. And it's like, I have a good one, but it's not like over the top good. And Pam's amazing. And she uses like so many different ones. So I said, all right, give me all your good ones. And so then I created one using a bunch of her great ones and then
Hmm.
basing off of some of mine as well. But yeah, it's one of my kids' favorites, like especially the boys in the family.
Yeah.
And so it was just one of those funny things that the boys always like, we would make breakfast for like early morning seminary, and they'd always ask for cinnamon rolls. And I was like, okay, as long as you don't mind that I made them the night before, because I am not getting up at 4 in the morning to
No,
make
no.
cinnamon rolls. I'm just, okay, no, it would have been 3 in the morning. So I was like, I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll take them. So it was just one of those funny things that my family loves them. And so it
Yeah.
was a fun thing to put in there.
Did you provide the recipe to your readers somewhere? I can't remember now.
So I don't think I've had it out there except that it's in the cookbook.
Oh, it is in the
So,
cookbook.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Are
can't
you?
remember. They may have done something with it for marketing, and I can't remember what they've done. It
Yeah, I
all
can't
comes
either.
together.
Did you do two cookbooks now? I can't recall.
Yeah, so the first book I ever wrote was a cookbook called I Don't Do Pie Crusts, and I did it with my mom.
Yeah.
And so that one's been out of print for years, but then I did the one with Sean Bessie and Sarah Eden. And so that one was a lot of fun. We were actually touring that one exactly this time last year, because I was texting
Hmm.
the other day. I said, do you remember last year on the day that daylight savings time changed, we had a 6 a.m. flight out of Denver. Do you remember? It was like, that was,
Oh, daylight savings is killing me, man. It's tough
I
to
know.
change. Throws everyone's schedule off. The dog, the kids, everyone.
Yep. And I grew up in Arizona, so I didn't even know what it was until I went to college. So,
Oh man. Well, we kind of had a fun little connection when I saw you at the airport. I was there to pick up my son, and you were at the airport running through, and I know you've been traveling recently, and you went to some really amazing places. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I my next Guardian book needs to be set in Asia, and I had never gone to Asia, believe it or not. And so one of my friends is living in Singapore, and so I said that's as good a place as any. And so I started in Singapore, and then we went to Thailand so Bangkok and then Pattaya for a week, and then came back to Singapore. And I was like, well, I'm in this part of the world. What else can I do? So I went over to Indonesia for a day, and then came back, and then I went up to Malacca in Malaysia and did that for a couple of days, and then came back. And then it's like, well, the book I'm working on right now, I'm actually proofreading one, and then I'm working on the sequel, has some moments in Turkey. And so I stopped in Istanbul on my way back for a day. And so that was a lot of fun. It was, one of my friends was like, oh my gosh, make sure you hire a professional tour guide because you're going to get kidnapped. And I was like, me? Like, you got to be kidding me. And the funny thing was, I was like, well, you know what? I'm only there for a day. Actually, getting a tour guide is smart because then I can prioritize my space. I'm not spending all my time looking for things and stuff like that. And little did I know that some of the sites you can't get into without a professional tour guide. And so that recommendation, her being worried I'd get kidnapped, totally gave me what I needed. So I was able to do a bunch of things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed, actually all of them, but it was a lot of fun. So, and it was so funny because going over, no problem with the jet lag. I slept on the flights and was fine. Coming back, coming west, but jet lag's real. It took me several days.
Because how long were you on the airplane?
So it's 2 12-hour flights, or between 11 and 12-hour flights. So Istanbul's literally halfway between Singapore and Virginia and DC.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long were you gone?
About just a little over 2 weeks. So
that sounds like a great tour, and it's a great time of year to go over there, isn't it?
Oh yeah, because it's tropics, so it's right on the equator, real close to it. So you're definitely packing very different clothes than you would be packing if I'm coming to Utah. So.
Did you bring home some fun souvenirs?
I mean, it was mostly I picked up some spices. I mean, had to get some baklava and some Turkish delight and some things like that, and did a few fun. A lot of times I just bring home different foods just so I can share it with my family and stuff. But when I was in Singapore, it was for Chinese New Year, and they gave me this. They have something called lo hei that it's like the dish that you do in Singapore for Chinese New Year. And so they gave me a kit so we could make it. So my family made it after I left. I was like, go for it. I've already had it a couple of times. Like everyone was celebrating while I was there. So it was fun. But it was funny though, because we made, when my tour guide in Istanbul was telling me, like explaining, it's like, yeah, Turkish delights. And then we have baklava. And he started explaining what baklava was, that it's this layered, it has like nuts and has a layered, it's phyllo tip is what it is. And I said, oh yeah, I make that. He looked at me like I had grown a third head. Like it was like, yeah, I don't even have two. Like he's like, you know how? And I said, yeah. He goes, that takes like 3 hours. I said, it usually takes me about 4. But I said, yeah. I said, the trick is not putting too much butter so it doesn't get too soggy and all this stuff. Well, I bring back the baklava that I bought in Turkey, and my whole family's like, yeah, yours is better.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, okay. And now we know, because I'd done the same thing. We're in the Turkish section in Munich, about a year and a half ago. Same thing happened. My husband was like, well, it's good, but I like yours better. So, it's when you make things at home, you make it the way you like it. True. And I think that's what it is like the nut mixture and things like that. And all the seasonings, I've made it the way my family, it just meets our taste. So. It is good.
Maybe you just make super good baklava.
That could be it. I don't know. When I don't use too much butter.
Yeah, not too much butter. Did you put baklava on your cookbook?
It is in there. It is in there.
Now people, you got to get this cookbook.
Actually, I think it's on sale for like $5 at sale. So
Oh,
It's a
nice.
deal.
You never know what you're going to get at book club. Deals everywhere.
So true.
So now you're working on a new series, is it?
Yeah, so I have there was just a lot of reorganization going on in Deseret Book Corp, and so I will actually have my first suspense coming out with Shadow Mountain. So they are launching
Oh,
a suspense line, and I have the honor of being the first book coming out. And
nice.
so yeah, so that one's called Hometown Vendetta, and it'll come out in October. So and then
Can
then I'll start a second series in April.
can you give us like a tiny hint what it's about?
So it's actually a lot of fun. It's somebody who's a military aide for the president. They have a terrorist, a suspect on a terrorist attack that ties back to his hometown, and he did not have a pleasant, high school experience. And they are like, you need to go back to your high school reunion to see if you can help figure out who this person is, because they have only a little glimpse of, a hint of it. So he ends up pairing up with an FBI special agent, and she goes undercover as his plus one, and they have to, figure things out. And so it's just a lot of fun. It
Yeah.
was kind of crazy because I had to write it super fast, but it was, one of those miracles of like, oh my gosh, I actually got it done on time.
Yeah.
And the CIA, I don't know, most people know my books have to clear the CIA if they have anything to do with intelligence. And so they were super helpful, and they cleared it very quickly for me, because I'm really good about saying like, okay, yeah, I take your time on this one. This is when the deadline is and stuff. But it's like, please, 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 like this one's really a tight turnaround. And so they were very good about it. And
Oh,
um,
that's good.
so yeah, so I'm excited. I'm actually proofreading that one right now, and that'll be
I wonder if
good.
the CIA person is like, oh, I'll take her book this time, or is it the same person or different people?
Um, It depends. Like sometimes I'll go through a series of times where it's like I'll get the same people over and over again. But I think a lot of times, especially if it's a series, they try to give those books to the same person just so they have the continuity of, like, one time they felt the need to redact something because, like, well, by itself it's not a big deal, but if you add all the little hints you've given through your books, it could become a problem. And so, they want to look at that continuity to make sure I'm not causing potentially a problem and such. So,
Nice.
and in that particular case, they changed their mind after they made me, go through the hoops, but
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. They're doing their job, and that's the important thing. So,
That's right. That's right. And so you said you're starting another new series too, was it?
yes. Yeah. And that'll be like playing off of my CIA days. So that one will,
And is that with Shadow Mountain or Covenant?
that'll be Shadow Mountain. So yeah, I'm still continuing my series with Covenant. So the next couple of years are going to be a little crazy. I have after Jim and Catherine, then I will have there's actually a anthology that I'm in it's called Magic and Miracles, that'll only be available for 1 week, but it's a fundraiser for Primary Children's Hospital in Utah.
Mm.
And so, in that one, I actually used a story from my coaching days when I was coaching high school swimming. So that was the novella I did for that. And then I've got, my Saint Squad and my Royals and my Guardians will finish those up, and hopefully start a new series with Covenant, at some point in the next couple of years. So,
Mm.
on Falcon Point, like, I can't keep track of them all, Julie. Like, I am an insane person. I need help. Somebody
Oh,
needs to do an
yeah.
intervention.
Well, it was probably good you have an assistant. And didn't you just recently retire from being a swimming coach? I feel like I
I
heard.
did. Yeah. So this is my second season off. So I've done 2 years that I've not been coaching, and it's been different. But like last year, I actually went back and helped, just volunteered at the state meet just to help out. And this
Yeah.
next year, the state meet's coming back to my community. So they've already asked if I would at least consult. And so, I'm still not completely removed,
Oh,
but
still got your
it's
finger in the
different.
pie.
Yeah.
I bet it's hard to stay away because didn't you do that for like a really long time?
26 years.
Ooh, long time.
So a very long time. So, But yeah, it just got to the point where, I mean, my kids were out, and I felt like I wasn't able to give the kids as much as they deserved. And I was like, you know what? Let's see if we can have, step aside and let some other people. And the person who replaced me was wonderful. So, it's just, but it is interesting. Oh my gosh, I could have fixed that. Like you're always looking at something,
Yeah.
I could have done that. But the coaches, I mean, all the coaches that have replaced me, have come behind me have been, they care about the kids, and that's what's important, is to give the kids a good experience and the opportunity to compete and learn and grow and be part of a team. So which
It's
is
just
great.
hard sometimes to hand your baby over that you love to someone else
Yes.
and then see them do things different. It's like, oh, I don't know if we should do that.
Yeah. Well, and especially because you don't even, it's not even the big things. It's, you do it so instinctively. Like
Yeah.
people would say like, oh, well, let's do a kick set today. I was like, we have a meet tomorrow. Why would you do that? And if you don't swim, you wouldn't even think about it. It's like having your legs dead the day before meet is not a good plan. Just putting that out there. So swim coaches out there, kick sets not the day before meet.
No.
But it's just little things that, I'd have people, oh, how about we do this? Well, yeah, that's great for Monday, but not today, or so it's just like, you do it for so long, and every time you're coaching, you're learning from somebody you're coaching against,
Yeah.
so you're just constantly learning and growing. And then the great thing was like, I felt like it helped a lot with my writing because I was constantly dealing with people who are teenagers. And
Mm-hmm.
so like when the kind of the language changes and, a lot of the phrasing changes as we get older.
Yeah.
And so if I say something and they're like, Coach, we have no idea what you just said. I'm like, okay, so that's now an antiquated phrase that I need to not use. I'm like, okay, would you please translate what you just said to me? Because I've never heard this one before. So it was just little things like that. And the kids would usually, when they'd go off to college, they'd come back and see us and stuff. So, it was good to just see like what struggles were they coming, handling, and how, what are the good things happening and things like that. So it's
Hmm.
fun.
So where do you get your ideas from for your books?
I have absolutely no idea.
They just pop into your head?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many ideas. Like, I mean,
Because
just
you're a
like I
are
was,
you a pantser? I can't remember now.
oh
Are
yeah,
you a pantser?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've done a few things where I've had to kind of plot things out, and every time I do, like Sarah Eden, I swear she cries with joy that she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so proud," and then I just can't follow plot. So, I try. But yeah, I mean, basically I get on my treadmill and I walk and I type and I just see what comes, and I just don't know. So usually I'll start with a character too, and I just maybe a general concept of like where they're starting and maybe what they'll deal with. But I often have no idea what they're going to deal with until I get there. So it's usually a complete surprise to me too. So anytime, and it hasn't happened recently, but I remember early in my career, I'd have people like put in the review like, oh my gosh, I saw this coming from a mile away. Like I knew the bad guy from chapter 3. And I would write back and I was like, can you please tell me how you figured it out? Because it would have saved me so much time had I known this ahead of time. And it's like, nobody would ever respond. I'm like, dude, I was serious. Like I really wanted to know. So I was not being facetious. Like I really have no clue how you figured this out. So,
Like I didn't even
and
know who the villain was till the end or something. You
yeah,
want to know how they were figuring it out.
yep. So it was
Oh,
funny.
that's too funny. All right. So I have to ask, what book are you reading right now? Do you even have time for reading with all the writing projects on your plate?
Not a lot. So actually what I've been reading is called, it's like The Secret Sisterhood of the CIA. I was reading it for a book club that I was a guest for last week, but I hadn't finished it all through. And it's been fascinating because it's literally like going back to my CIA days, going, oh my gosh, this explains so much about how the culture was. And, it's just about, we had a lot of, there was a lot of early prejudice against women doing a lot of things in the agency. And I was in the period of change where a lot of things were, we'd run up against people who wouldn't listen to you because you're a woman. But then there were a lot of people who were great advocates. So, and I was fortunate that I had way more of the latter. Like I worked with some really wonderful people, but it was interesting seeing, like reading about, and I'm still going through it, but just reading about different things of operations that are going on and that different people went through. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like, yeah, she was pretty good on her research. This was pretty accurate, things like that. So it's fun. It's been interesting.
Hmm. I wonder if she was given permission to publish that. Do they even need permission, I guess?
So
I
they
don't know.
don't need permission, but what would happen is like in interviews and such, probably most of the people who were interviewed had to get permission to share certain stories. So
That makes
would be
sense.
my guess. Because it wouldn't surprise me. Like if somebody were to interview me on, like, for example, I taught a class on like getting things right in this about, for writing characters for the CIA and things like
Mhm.
that. And in the intelligence community at the Storymakers Conference, Writers Conference. And before I taught the class, I had to go to this. I went to the public affairs people at CIA. I'm like, I need to know what can I say? And so I was interviewing, I'm like, all right, would you be able to tell me this? Like if I was asking about this, what can you tell me? Because I know what the answer is, but what would you be able to say so that I can share that with an author? And same thing, I did the same thing with the FBI and can't remember if I talked to the NSA. I think we just emailed back and forth with the DIA. So some of the different agencies and stuff. So yeah, it's fun.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I have to ask you, I know you said that you get on the treadmill and start writing. Is that what motivates you and energizes you to get the ideas flowing? Is the treadmill, or do you have something that just starts those ideas flowing?
I really think that when we're in motion, our brains just work differently. And I think that I've trained myself that when I'm walking, that's time to generate ideas. But I mean, sometimes I'll do a couple of sticky notes of like, all right, I think this is what's going to happen next. Like this is whose point of view should be coming next and things like that. And this is what I think, this is what I've already set up from a previous scene that should be happening. And sometimes something else will happen first and I don't actually get to what I think I'm going to do. but yeah, I don't know. I think it's just because I don't do anything else during that time. Like I never watch TV when I'm on the treadmill. I never read. I try to avoid my phone. I mean, if I'm early enough, I will even leave my phone in a different room. Like I won't even bring it with me. Because being on the East Coast, my publishers are all in the West. So nobody's going to be calling. If I'm on the treadmill at 6 or 7 in the morning, they're sleeping, so or hopefully they're sleeping.
Yeah, hopefully they're sleeping.
So yeah, it's like, it just kind of, I feel like if I do the creative on the first thing I do in the day, then the rest of the day I can always go back to it. But if I balance my checkbook first thing in the morning, I'm done. Like that side of my brain is more dominant. And I like, well, I guess I'll work on marketing today because my writing brain was not jump started when it was supposed to. So like, you kind of find out what works for you, and it's interesting because every writer is so different,
Yeah.
And I also find even for individual writers, like I didn't used to do this. I used to just sit at my desk and write. And I mean, I was a complete closet writer when I started. So I would only write if nobody was available to look over my shoulder, and and now it's just like, okay, I'll sit there and I'll have something. If there's a long light, you might find me typing because like, bored. Let's see what our characters can do next. So,
Do you write 5 days a week then?
5 to 6. Yeah. I'll usually do like Saturdays. I'll usually do I'll do my treadmill and exercise bike, and then I'll kind of call it good at that point. So unless I get to where, when you want to just sit down and read a good book or just watch TV or whatever, if I'm in that space of like, it's just my fun time, my family's occupied doing their own thing and stuff, and I'm like, actually, I'd really rather find out what happens next in my book, then I'll pick it up. And if not, if I really just need downtime, I just take it. So Saturday is usually a half day.
Yeah. Well, with everything you've got going, I can see why you have to write 6 days a week.
Oh, I'm crazy. I'm trying to slow it down.
Because you're doing Falcon Point with Sean Bessie. Let's see if we can get this. Okay, so you have something coming out in June, the next Guardian series?
So the next Saint Squad is coming out in June.
Saint Squad. So, okay, Jim and Catherine on tomorrow. Saint Squad in June. Then what?
So, and then I actually have the fundraiser, the Magic
Okay.
and Miracles will be April, or April into May. So
Fundraiser in
then
April.
Disconnect, and then Royal Duty will be my
Mhm.
next Royal.
Royal
And
Duty.
then my first Shadow Mountain title, Hometown Vendetta, will be October. And then
October,
the next Falcon Point will come out in November. So that'll
November.
round out this year.
And isn't that
And
like
then
seven? That's 7 books or 7 stories,
I
right?
I think it's 6. I think I've got 6 this year. So
Hmm.
it's Jim and Catherine, Magic and Miracles, Disconnect. Yeah, it's 6. So then the Royal,
Oh, pretty good.
the yeah. So 6 this year, and I think it'll be like 5 next year, and
Mm,
then 6 the next year, and then 5 or 6 next year. I'm trying to get down to 4. The goal is I'm going to get it down to 4, but it was really the fact that we wanted to start this suspense series at Shadow Mountain. And
mhm.
so I had so many series still going with Covenant
Um,
that I was like, okay, I need to finish these series up, but I'm already starting the new ones with Shadow Mountain. So I'm in this next couple of years of having higher number of books than is normal or sane. And then,
mhm.
yeah, and then it'll come back down to hopefully the ideal is that I'll get down to 2 books for Covenant and 2 books for Shadow Mountain.
So I'm assuming Shadow Mountain will be more of a national audience without any
Yes.
religious overtones.
Yeah, and basically that's what's been happening is they're trying to kind of rebrand a little bit so that Covenant will be more of specific religion, religion specific content
Yeah,
within their fiction. So that's really what they're heading toward. And then Shadow Mountain is not, that's just a straight national.
right.
And so because I don't really put religion specific content in my books anymore, I probably will not go backwards on that because it's not that I don't put it in. It's more I'm very subtle so that if you know somebody is a certain religion, you'll know what they are. You'll be able to visualize it. But if somebody is a different religion, they can just visualize it their way. And it's just
Okay.
trying to make it a little broader and friendlier to because there's just a lot of people out there who would love to have clean fiction, but they don't want it so specific. But
Yes.
Covenant is trying to do more that does have the religion specific so that people who want it, it's there, and it's available to them. So,
Hmm.
so
That's a smart move, but I'm not a publishing company, just a reader. Fun. All right. Well, my last question for you today is well, okay, I have 2 questions. Do you have any hidden talents that you would like to share? And what would
hmm,
your advice be to a new writer?
hidden talents, I have absolutely no idea. Probably ones I can't tell you about would be the most. Yeah, like I, I'm. I people may already know this, but like one of my things that I'm actually really good at is finance. Like that was what I graduated in, and I know that's not a normal thing for people to graduate in going into writing books, but that was kind of my thing. So there's a few things I do there that probably are, maybe I shouldn't talk about because of my background, but okay, so what was my second question? That'll be
What would your
easier.
advice be to a new writer?
I honestly think the biggest advice I would give is, well, it's twofold. One is don't give up. Like you have to learn to take criticism, and that's really hard. And there will be a time where you want to give up, and it's just you have to decide not to. But the other
Mm,
thing is to find somebody you can truly trust, or even a group of people you can really trust, who will give you good constructive criticism that is going to help you grow as an author. Because that's how I got to where I am. It took me 7 years to write my first book. And I had one person who just patiently kept working with me, and they'd find the biggest problem and tell me what it was, and I would fix that. And then they'd find the next biggest problem and tell me what it was, and I'd fix that. And we went for years like that. And just, it's okay. But, when you first write something, it's like, oh my gosh, this is good. And it's like, yeah, it may be a really great story, but we have to learn the craft. And really, even for established authors, we're still always learning. Like I'm going to be on the front row of some of those craft classes just to say, what am I missing? What have I maybe gotten lazy on? What could I do better? Are there new trends that maybe I haven't really considered using before? So anyway,
Mm.
I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that would be my advice.
Good advice. Good advice. I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for joining us at Book Club today. I appreciate it. Can't wait for all of your new projects that are coming out. I just did your review of Jim and Catherine in Meridian Magazine,
Well,
and
fun.
I was really impressed with what a fun story it was. It's a fun romance with a little bit of intrigue at the end, just enough to keep you turning those pages really fast.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me today. It's been fun catching up.
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've seen you, except for the airport when we were kind of
And that was
crossing.
that was a quick, yeah.
Yeah, well, can't wait to see all your new stuff. Thanks again, Traci.
Thanks, Julie.